Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Those of you who are listening to the introduction, you can see that I do a lot of things. I've written 16 books. I just had a 16th one come out on the new equity crowdfunding rules, how you can raise money for your company using crowdfunding websites. I have a nationally syndicated newspaper column. It's called succeedinginyourbusiness.com. It's soon to be a podcast, by the way. I'm making that into a podcast now. I have a law practice. I speak around the country to business groups on various topics relating mostly to business law and management. And as you can see, time management, when you have that kind of a life, and I actually have a name for that, I call that a portfolio career, by the way. Where you do different things to generate revenue, and each one probably wouldn't be that exciting, but all of them together can give you quite an exciting way to make a living. I'm a big believer in portfolio careers, and whenever you have a portfolio career, time management becomes the key essential skill. If you don't do it well, you will have trouble managing a portfolio career. If you're having trouble managing your life now, wait till you're doing all the things that I'm doing now and see what happens. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight is not so much expertise. It's going to be, this is what I do. Okay, so let's begin. Okay. And let's just go ahead. Now, do you believe I'm a lawyer now? Okay. We always tell you what we're not going to do before we tell you what we are going to do. The only thing up there that's important, obviously I know some of you have questions, and after the program tonight we're going to try to answer as many of those as possible. But there's a very big difference between giving out legal information and legal advice. Legal information is, here's what the law says. Legal advice is, here's what you should do. While I can give you a lot of information tonight, and I'm certainly going to try, I'm not in a position to really give any of you advice as to what you should do. For that, I have to get to know you a little better. Frankly, you're going to have to pay me a little bit of money. Not much. I'm pretty reasonable. But I need to know a little bit more about you before I can say, now, you should do this, but you should do something exactly opposite. I'm not at that stage. So please, whatever you listen to tonight, do not take it as legal, tax, or any other kind of advice. That you should only be getting from a professional who is licensed to practice in your state or wherever you live. And one other disclaimer I'm going to make here before we launch into the program is, I wish I could look at you straight in the eye and say I'm the best time manager that there is on earth. I wish I could say that, but I really can't. And I'm not just being humble about that. It is the God's honest truth. There are times when I do not do this very well. In fact, there are a couple of people here in the room tonight who can testify under oath that I am not always a perfect time manager. When you're doing as many things as I'm doing, it becomes a real challenge. And there are times I don't do it well. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is not the perfect way to do it. If any of you know that, by the way, please see me after the program. I'd love to know. But I'm going to be talking about, this is what I do. Take it for what it's worth. This is what I do. Some of it may work for you, and some of it may not. So that's my other little disclaimer. In fact, you're going to see that's one of my points. There is no such thing as perfect time management, so don't worry about it. That's one of the messages you're going to take away tonight. Okay. So time management is everyone's biggest challenge, not just people like me who have a portfolio career. Time is your most valuable asset, by the way. And that's a cliche, but it's more than just a cliche. It is absolutely true. Time is more valuable than money. If you make a bad deal, you buy the wrong stock or something like that and it crashes, or if you spend a little too much, if you do something in your business that doesn't work out and you lose a little bit of money, you can always make it back on the next deal, on the next trade, on the next customer or client. Those problems are solvable. But if you spend 6 months of your life doing something that totally fails and that doesn't bring in any revenue and that doesn't give you what you want, those are 6 months of your life that you will never get back. Nobody will give you back those 6 months that you have lost. We've only got so much time on this planet, folks. And we all want to be spending as much of it doing the things that are the most important and the most valuable to us. That is your challenge, not just in business, but every day as well. Time is your most valuable asset. It is not to be wasted. And no secret here, everybody these days is starved for time. And part of the blame for this should be laid squarely on our technology that we have. I mean, those of you who are old enough to remember what it was like to do business in the 1960s and 70s, technology has made our life a lot more convenient, It certainly has. I'm not, and by the way, I am not knocking technology at all. Without smartphones and laptops and all that wonderful stuff, I could not do what I do. I could not do a portfolio career. Doing a portfolio career in the 1970s was just about impossible. We needed today's technology for this so that people could have that kind of life. But technology can also be a time vampire in a very big way, especially things like email, chat services, things like WeChat. These things can be incredible time vampires. A ringing smartphone, a text message that's always bleeping every 5 minutes, an email thing that always dings every time you get a new email. These are screaming idiots saying, me, now, I'm the most important thing in your life. Now, stop what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care about you. You answer me now, me now, me, now. That's what those things are doing. Those smartphone messages, those emails, those things that go bleep. They are distracting you from the things that are important and the things that need to be done. And one of the things you got to learn to do is to manage that. Is to manage that process. Now, don't get me wrong. Interruptions are part of time management. In fact, they're a very important part of time management. There are times when you should be interrupted from doing what you're doing, but there are also times when you cannot be. And part of time management is simply getting control of that. When will you be interrupted? When will you allow yourself to be interrupted? And when will you not allow yourself to be interrupted under any circumstances? Now, I'm just going to warn you, some of the things I'm going to say tonight are a little politically incorrect, but I think they're also very true. So, again, I'm not saying this is the perfect way to do things. This is just what I do. Okay, why do people lose control of their time? Well, let's face it, there are just some people who are totally disorganized. They can't get control of their life under. I see some of you guys, blinking your eyes saying, yeah. Don't knock yourself, by the way. I don't think most of you fall into this category. I only see a very few people, by the way, who are like this, who totally cannot organize their lives. They cannot discipline themselves at all to do things in a certain. There are some people like that, though, but they're very few and far between, and not the mass of humanity by any means. More often than not, people lose control of their time because they try to do too much at once. Multitasking is a myth. I'm going to say that again. Multitasking is a myth. It doesn't exist. It is fake news. It is absolutely fake news. No one can do two things at once. You can do lots of things in quick succession that you can do, but at any moment in time, you can only be doing one thing. Hopefully you are listening to this program and not looking at your smartphones. Okay, I hope not anyway, but maybe you are, and that's the other thing. But there's also a third reason. People lose control of their time because they're too nice and they cannot say no to people. To be successful at time management, you have to be a little bit ruthless. Not everybody, not everything is worthy of your time. Remember I said a minute ago, time is your most valuable asset? If you had a bag full of gold coins, would you give it to the next person you meet, after you leave this program tonight? Of course you wouldn't, right? So why are you giving your time, your precious time, your most precious asset that is more precious than money, to people who are not deserving of that time, at least at that moment? Why are you doing that? That's how a lot of people lose control of their time. I have a whole video on this, by the way. It's on my YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com, search for Cliff Enico. I always go by Cliff, never Clifford. You will see a video called 3 Personality Traits That All Successful Entrepreneurs Must Develop. And one of these is ruthlessness, which, by the way, does not mean what you think it does. It doesn't mean unethical, sleazy, or anything like that. It means something quite different. I'm not going to spend any time on that tonight. For that, I think you should look at that video. But being a little ruthless and a little selfish, quite frankly, about your time is one of the first steps to successful time management. Okay? Urgent versus important. I wish I could claim credit for this, but I can't. The person who invented this concept is a person called Stephen Covey, who is, unlike me, a world-class expert on time management. He wrote a number of books. His bestseller was a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Came out in the 1980s. It's still in print today. If you have to read one book on time management in your life, this is the book you want to read, because it's absolutely magnificent. He draws a very important distinction between things that are urgent and things that are important. And he breaks it down into 4 categories. And one of the reasons why people lose control of their time is they have trouble distinguishing and sorting out these 4 things. So first of all, tasks that are urgent and important. A screaming child, for example, would be a good example of this. It's urgent and it is important. Most of us don't have any trouble with that. Most of us do a pretty good job of managing the tasks that are urgent and important, right? If it's a crisis, a screaming crisis, you're going to be all over that. And most of us will anyway, unless we're deaf, dumb, and blind. We see that. Most of those we don't have problems with. The other thing we don't have problems with are the tasks that are non-urgent and non-important. If something isn't urgent and it isn't important, what do? You blow it off. Most of us do. These are the things that never get done, and they shouldn't get done because they're not urgent and they're not important. We do a pretty good job of managing that too. But there are two things we don't do a good job of masking, and those are the two that are in between. The urgent but not important task and the important but not urgent tasks. Given the choice, if you had two things like that happening at exactly the same moment, something that was urgent but not important, something that was important but not urgent, which would you choose? Which one would you default to? You probably would default to the urgent but not important thing. And that's the wrong thing to do. It is absolutely the wrong thing to do. What you should be focusing on are the important but not urgent task. The screaming client who only gives me $100 worth of business a year but who needs something done within an hour, that person should not be taking priority over me planning my next book, which is important but not urgent. You see that? You hear the difference in that? Determining which is urgent but not important, that can sometimes be a bit tricky, but most of us, when we're faced with that choice, we do the wrong thing. And Stephen Covey points it out in his book. We default to the urgent thing when we should be defaulting to the thing that is important and not urgent. Okay, here are my 5 steps to becoming a time lord. Anybody knows that's from Doctor Who, the sci-fi series. Here are the 5 rules. Number 1, take responsibility for your time. We're going to talk about each of these. Understand that at any given moment you can do only one thing. Plan each day and week, more if you can. Develop protocols for being interrupted. Interruptions are inevitable. You can't stop them, but you can control them. And that's what number 4 is all about. And then lastly, understand that perfect time management is impossible. Build in room for surprises. Let's begin with step 1. Believe it or not, you decide what is urgent and what is important. You decide at any given moment what you are going to work on at any given time. Eleanor Roosevelt once said that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. That's a famous Eleanor Roosevelt quote. Well, my corollary to that is no one can interrupt your flow without your consent. If you're working on a project and you get a cell phone interruption, you decide at that moment whether you stick with the project and return the call later or interrupt the project to take the cell phone call. You make that decision yourself. That is your decision. No one is forcing you to do that. Even though the smartphone's going, me, now. You have the ability to, and my smartphone sounds exactly like that, by the way. You have the power to say yes or say no. You are in control here of your time. And no one can interrupt that without your consent. Okay? Taking personal responsibility is the first step and an essential step to time management. Your daily mantra, and this is my daily mantra, by the way. My clients are important, don't get me wrong. They give me my livelihood. I'm not going to ignore them, although I will tell you, I actually have a nice little saying, and you can try this, by the way, with some of your clients. If you ever get into a situation where you just can't get to a client or a customer at a certain point in time, it's a great line. It always makes them laugh. Don't worry, you're not being ignored, you're just being prioritized. Seriously, write that down. It's not copyrighted. You're perfectly free to use it. Don't worry, you're not being ignored. You're just being prioritized. It's a great line. It always gets a chuckle, and they get the message, which is, okay, Cliff's on the case. He's just finishing something else now, and then hopefully he'll turn to my little emergency that I need done. As an independent contractor, by the way, how many people here work as consultants or independent people? Okay, pretty much half the room. You probably know, by law, as an independent contractor, you must be allowed to control your time. If I'm a client, I can certainly say, hey, Jane, can you get that contract to me by Friday? Can you get that project done for me by next week? I can give you a deadline. I certainly can. And of course, if you value my business, you'll make sure you meet the deadline. But between now and then, between now and the deadline, you decide, okay, I'm going to work on Cliff's project for an hour, then I'm going to work on Jane's project, then Joe's, then Boris's, and that's how I'm going to handle my day today. That's what makes you an independent contractor. If you do not have the ability to do that, you are legally an employee of that person. You are not an independent contractor. Your boss can come up to you at any time. If you're an employee, if you're a W-2, your boss can come up to you at any time and say, hey, Mary, stop doing that right now. I need you to pack this box over here. I want to make the UPS deadline, and then when that's finished, go back and finish what you were doing. If I'm your boss, I have the right to do that. But if I'm a client, I do not have the right to do that. I don't have the right to say to any of you right now, stop listening to this program, go back to your cell phones, I really need you to finish this contract in the next hour. I don't have the ability to do that. If I have that power, then you are my employee. You are not a W-9 independent contractor, a 1099 person. You are not legally that. This is my quote, and it's a great line. The client who wants 24/7 access in real time is a client not worth having. And I hope that doesn't sound too cynical for any of you. Remember I said some of this stuff's going to be politically incorrect. Some people are not worthy of your time. Anybody who wants that kind of, here's how I can tell if I'm dealing with that kind of a person. A client emails me, I call the client, first words out of their mouth, Cliff, before we go any further, I want your cell phone number. Okay, the minute I know that, I know I'm dealing with somebody who wants to own me and own my time. How do I deal with that? I deal with it very nicely and politely. Say, well, I do have a service. It's called expedited service. I give you my cell phone, I give you my email, I give you my contact. You'll have access to me 20 hours out of 24 every day, 7 days a week. The problem is, however, there's a monthly retainer involved, and the monthly retainer is $15,000 per month. If you're going to be my best client, and if you want me to be available on that time frame, you're going to pay my mortgage every month and some other expenses. I think that's a fair bet, don't you? Anybody who wants that much of your time, and usually when I do that, they kind of get the message, all right, maybe I don't quite need that level of service. Maybe I'm willing to accept something else. See, this is really a program on client management and customer management, because they're the ones who always create the headaches here. Seriously, anybody who wants that, and especially if they're not willing to pay for it, that's a client that's one of the ways you screen out bad clients, is that. At Cute Line, would you rather I answer your emails or get your work done? Every once in a while, I get a client that sends me so many emails. It happened just the other day. This client I was working on, I was reviewing a business plan, and this person sent me 25 emails in the space of 2 hours. And at some point, I called them. You're laughing. You probably have had this too, right? You have clients like that too, right? I'm sure. Seriously, there are people, and by the way, if you're laughing because you think I'm crazy, wait till you start doing what I do. They're out there, believe me. I had to call her up and say, look, I appreciate the fact that you want me to get this done quickly. I am looking at it now. I will answer your emails in time, but please, can you stop sending me emails at this point? Otherwise, I can't get through this stupid thing that you need me to do. At some point, you have to have that conversation with your clients, because there are some people out there who think that email generates instantaneous response. Okay, so that's taking control. Take control of your time. Take responsibility for it. If you're being so distracted that you're not getting anything done that you're supposed to be done, that's your problem, that's your fault. Take responsibility for it. You're the one making those decisions. Get control of your time by making it very clear that at any given time during the day, you are doing the most important thing that can possibly be done at that specific moment. Okay. Step 2, multitasking is a myth. It's fake news. Okay. No one can multitask. No one can do 2 things at once. Our brains are not set up that way. Don't get me wrong, we can do lots of things in quick succession, but at any given moment in time, we can only do one specific thing. Right now, I am totally 100% focused on doing this talk and not making a fool of myself. That is what I am doing right now. I'm not thinking about the work that has to be done when I get home. I am not thinking about my clients. I'm not thinking about the next book. I'm not thinking about the crazy email that I got 5 minutes ago from someone saying, hey, Cliff, you're an idiot. I just watched your video. You don't know what you're talking about. There are people like that out there, okay? I'm not thinking about that. And by the way, if you're watching this video, you're toast, dude. It's just a little personal message to that person. You know who you are, okay? But seriously, I'm going to talk now to the guys in the room. Male human beings, people with Y chromosomes, do not try to multitask. Seriously. There are some women who come close to doing it, although even they can't do it, but guys especially, we can't do that. Our brains are not wired that way. If men try to multitask, the results never come out well. Okay, so just guys in the room, Y chromosomes, I hate to stereotype, but it's true. Do not attempt it if you have a Y chromosome. In fact, I joke to some people, every once in a while I'll get caught trying to do too many things at once, and I say, I apologize, I'm guilty of a federal crime, I'm multitasking with a Y chromosome. That's, and that's my way of joking my way out of the situation. Seriously, especially if you have a Y chromosome, but even if you don't try to multitask. It doesn't work. At any given moment right now, you can only be doing one thing. Are you doing the right thing right now? Are you listening to me or are you looking at your cell phone? Well, either way, you've made the decision that that's the more important thing to do. That's what taking control and responsibility for your time means. If you're typing right now, you just missed something very important, by the way, okay, which is that you can only be doing one thing right now. Being a Zen master helps somewhat. I was very lucky when I was in college, I took a course on Zen. And not the religious part of it, you know, the Buddhism and all that. If you're into that, that's great. But the Zen philosophy is a very good philosophy if you really want to get control of your time, because the Zen masters teach that the only reality in the world is what's going on right this second, right this moment. If you've ever taken Zen training, anybody here ever do Zen training or something like that? Seriously, it's one of those things you might want to do at some point in your life because it focuses you to be very mindful of this moment. The Zen philosophy is that we live our lives one moment at a time, and the only thing that is real is this exact, precise moment. Not 5 seconds ago when I began this sentence, not 5 seconds from now when I end it, but right this second, this moment, right now. Think of it as a little radio tuner, a little line that's going like this from left to right, and this is how we live our lives. And once that line moves on, what does the Bible say? The moving finger writes and having writ moves on. That's how a Zen master looks at the world. The only thing that is real is not yesterday, not the future, but what is going on right now. Are you doing the exact right thing that you should be doing at this particular moment in time? Because that's all you have. You don't have tomorrow, you don't have yesterday. As Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young once sang, the past is just a goodbye. It's gone, and the future doesn't exist yet. Actually, or if you like Broadway, from the Broadway musical La Cage aux Folles, the best of times is now. Not some forgotten yesterday, not tomorrow, tomorrow's too far away, the best of times is now. It's a great song and a great theme song for anybody trying to manage their time better. Another great author, I've talked about Stephen Covey, another great author who wrote a lot about this, he's long since passed away, was Dale Carnegie. Most of you know him from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People on People Skills. Well, he also wrote a very great book in the 1920s called How to, I can't remember the exact title of it, but it was How to Get Control of Your Time and that kind of thing. And he made the point about living your life in day-tight compartments. Don't try to think about next week or the week after or last week or the week before. Focus on day-tight compartments. Live as if you were living in a little bulkhead where all you had was the things you could do in a single day. What is your best day? What's the perfect day look like? When I wake up in the morning, I look at my calendar and I ask myself, what is this day going to look like? I'm not worried about tomorrow. I'm not worried about the score presentation next week. I'm worried about how am I going to get through today? Live your life in daytime, or as I would say, hour-type compartments. Live your life in hour-type. The title of the book, by the way, is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. I knew I'd come up with it eventually. It's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It's really a book on avoiding anxiety, but he also has a lot of good time management advice in that book as well. If you get a chance, you can get it at any library or any book sale for $1. So, step 3, plan your day and week. Use a planner. Okay, now I'm old school. I use paper. I use one of those old day timers and stuff like that. That's just who I am. I live in the analog world, and I'm sorry. There are, however, a lot of great planners that are absolutely free for your smartphone. If you are an Excel user or if you use an Android, and by the way, you can take a photo of the slide. I don't expect you to write down all of this. If you're interested in any of these, all you have to do, just go online and search for time management tools for Android. And you will, in quotes, and you will see, like there's a dozen products out there. This is a particularly good one for Android. It's the one I have on my planner, although I tend to use the analog. I tend to use the dead trees, the bricks and mortar. I don't use it as much as I probably should. For iPhones, that is a great free app to plan your weekday. If you don't really want to use your smartphone, use a Dayminder calendar. You can get these at any Staples or Office Max or Office Depot for about $20. You want one, though, where you can break it down by hours. See, as a lawyer, I'm lucky when it comes to this stuff. Believe it or not, lawyers are lucky in this respect. We're taught from our early training to bill our time and to do it by hours. We keep timesheets, and I still keep them, by the way. Even though I haven't worked for a law firm in over 20 years, I still use a timesheet. I actually do them. I want to know exactly. It's a great exercise to do. You know, from 9 to 11, I worked on that, and then I went to the bathroom from 11 to 11:30. Why did I need so much time in the bathroom? Wait a minute, I spent what was I doing in there that took a half an hour? It makes you think about how you're using your time. And wait a minute, I shouldn't have taken the half an hour on that. I probably did something else too, but it's one of the ways of catching yourself when you're wasting your time. It's a good exercise to do. Now, most of us are not lawyers, so you haven't been trained to do, but it's a good exercise to do. Do a little timesheet, and just keep track of your time from it. If nothing else, it will teach you what you're doing wrong. You'll see where you're spending too much time on things that aren't really that urgent or that important, and that maybe you shouldn't be spending as much time on. It's a great tool. There are 2 key rules here. Okay, rule number 1 is budget time when you will do nothing but answer emails and phone calls. This is one of my great little tricks. Emails and phone calls are important, don't get me wrong, but they deserve a time of their own. I have 2 blocks of time, and I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm going to show you one of my day planners, what I look like in just a second. But I actually budget time when I do nothing but answer emails. That's all I do. Twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. Okay? From 12 to 12:30, I'm answering emails. That's it. I don't do anything else. That's how I prioritize my time, and that's how I make sure my emails get answered, by the way. Budget time for that, just like you budget time for anything else. Then second, block out times when you will not look at your technology at all. And by the way, this is not just a tool for time management, it's a tool for staying sane. You gotta put your technology on a shelf at least a few hours every week, or else you will go crazy trying to keep on top of it. You cannot work that fast. No human being on this earth, and I don't care how old you are, I don't care if you're a millennial, you grew up with this technology, no one can work that at the speed that those machines can work. You got to have some time for yourself. One of my rules, I never answer emails or voice messages after 3 p.m. on Fridays, after noon on Saturdays, or anytime on Sundays, unless I have a deal closing. If I'm in the middle of trying to get a deal done, that tends to be a top priority. I'm getting emails literally on an hourly basis on that deal, and I will make an exception for that because I don't want to wake up Monday morning and have to do 50 different things to get the deal closed. If there's a closing on Monday, it means that I'm probably going to end up getting stuck working at least a few hours on Sunday. What about the 3 p.m. on Fridays, by the way? Does that strike you as a little weird, that I don't take calls? Why do I not take calls after 3 p.m. on Fridays? Because I'll tell you a secret. There is a reason. And that is because I have learned, I've been practicing law for 38 years, people. Everybody calls their lawyer on Friday afternoons. Everybody. 2 o'clock, the phone starts, and seriously, these are people I haven't heard from in years that are calling me. They've had this thing sitting on their desk for months or weeks. And when do they call their attorney? Friday afternoon. Why do they do this? Because they are evil. Because they want to disrupt my weekend. That's what they want to do. I've been sitting on this for a while, but listen, here's a contract, can you just take a quick look at it, between now and Monday? This is what they do. So what do? I ignore them. I prioritize them. I call them back first thing Monday. I do call them back first thing on Monday. I do that. But I don't let them disrupt my weekend. If you've had something that's been sitting on your desk and you only think at 3 o'clock on Friday to call your attorney, it can wait till Monday. I am not an emergency room surgeon. Nobody is going to die between Friday and Monday. Okay, yet a lot of you people act like as if that's the case. If you're an emergency room surgeon, yes, you can't do that. You can't just stop in the middle of an operation and say, okay, dude, just breathe the gas, I'll come back Monday morning. You can't do that. And by the way, if you are a doctor and you are doing that, talk to your malpractice insurer, please. But seriously, most things will not die between Friday and Monday, and yet there are a lot of people who act like that's the case, and I try to block them out. A couple of very specific tricks always include, when you do your email signature line, how many people here do not have a signature line on their emails? Okay, good. Nobody's raising their hand. That's good. You should always have a signature line, and you can do a lot of really neat stuff in there. You can make like a little marketing message. You'll see, if you ever see one of mine, I have all my books there, the latest 2 books that I wrote with the prices, and where you order them on Amazon and stuff like that. But more importantly, you can put in office hours. Calls will be, and emails will be returned 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. Do that. That creates expectations of when you will be available for interruption. That's a great little trick to do that. Also, charge a premium rate. Every once in a while, I do have a client that does send me something on Friday that absolutely, positively has to be done by Monday or his world will fall apart. In the situation where that happens, my fee is 1.5 times what it normally is. I'm saying, well, great, I'll do this for you, but just so you know, we're not talking $300 an hour, we're talking $450 an hour. Can you handle that? And I do that. And I'll tell you, half the time I do that, the client says, you know what, you can take till Tuesday, it's okay. They get the message. If someone's going to really own your time like that, charge for that. This person is taking a piece of your life away. You want to make sure you're being adequately compensated for that. Okay, I promised you this. This is a typical day in my life. I just want you to see what this looks like. This is how I do my timesheets. I just picked this off. This was a couple of weeks ago. Notice, by the way, that I plan my personal stuff too. This isn't just business and work stuff. So 6:30 to 7:30, breakfast, bathroom, newspaper, reading newspapers and stuff like that. 7:30 to 8 o'clock, I plan my day. I put planning in as part of every day, usually in the morning. I'm not really much of a morning person, so planning is a good sort of low-key activity for me. 8 to 9, I work on my current column, article, or books. I'm not even thinking about my law clients. You see that? I'm thinking about the books. As I find out if I don't write every day, I get myself caught in deadline hell eventually. How long do you think it takes to write a 400-page book, nonfiction? I'll tell you the honest truth, it takes about 6 months. And 6 months. And if you're not writing every single day of those 6 months, you fall behind in a real hurry. I always budget time for writing, and I usually do it in the morning, because that's when I'm just a little bit fresher. You can do it another time. If you are a writer and you're having trouble getting that book done, this is how you solve that problem. Okay, I could actually give you a whole course on how to discipline yourself and how to plan when you're writing a book. 9 o'clock, I start doing legal work. I work for client A. 10:30 to 11:30, answer emails and phone calls from previous night. Remember I said you should budget your time for this? I budget a whole hour where I do nothing but answer emails and phone calls from the previous night, early morning. 11:30 to 12:30, I walk if the weather's nice or gym. Exercise, by the way, very important, okay? Those of you who work out of your home, you will probably gain 10, 15, 20 pounds your first year. And I'm not kidding about that. I have another video that I have on my YouTube channel called How to Work from a Home Office, and I talk about the need for physical exercise. I'm at an age right now where there's no question I have to lose a little bit of weight. My doctor's all over me on this, and that is an important priority. I don't care if my clients are happy if I'm dead. Right? So that your health does have to be a priority, and seriously, whatever that is, if it's your AA meeting or something, make sure, whatever your thing is, make sure you're budgeting time for your health, for fitness, whatever. Notice, by the way, from 3:30 to 4, 15:30, respond to journalist inquiry for small business article. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. This is one of the interruptions that I always try to plan for, because it happens a lot in my life. Notice also from 1600 to 17, I apologize for the military time, but you can figure it out. That's from 4 to 5 in the afternoon. Answer emails and phone calls from earlier in the day. Again, this is a specific block of time where I'm doing nothing but answering emails and phone calls. 5 to 5:30, go to the UPS store, mail out documents. We still live in a world of dead trees to some extent. There is something called snail mail. You don't get as much of it as you used to, thank goodness, but you do still get a lot of it, and you have to budget time, especially in my world. A lot of things are not digital in the legal world, so I still have to use paper and that kind of stuff. I got to find time to go to the mail, to the post office, mail out certified mail, wait in line. I still got to do stuff like that. I don't have anybody to help me there. Travel to speaking engagement and deliver score program, like this one. I always make sure I put that in. Then last week, stop working, have dinner, and review the incoming snail mail is what I do. That's a typical day for me. But I just want to give you the exercise. This is what your day plan looks like when you're doing multiple things. Okay. Let's talk about your email inbox, because this is one of the biggest threats to your time management program. Don't get me wrong, without email, we couldn't function. All right, please don't take anything I say here tonight as a knock on technology. Without this stuff, we couldn't exist. But we have to learn to manage it, or else it will manage us. It will own us. Perform triage. Triage is basically taking something and dividing it into 3 parts. Basically, which ones do you answer immediately? Which ones do you answer later on? Which ones do you never answer? One of my favorite New Yorker cartoons, do you know this one? It shows a guy at a desk, he's on a phone, and he's talking to somebody. He's obviously trying to set up a date to do something, and he says, no, next Tuesday won't work. How about never? Is never good for you? You know the one I'm talking about? If you're interested in that cartoon, if you want to have it as an inspiration, I have it on my desk, and that's where you can find about it. First thing I do, I open my email box when I get to the time of day when I'm supposed to be doing nothing but doing this, and I see all this stuff. The first thing I do, I scroll down quickly and I get rid of the obvious junk. You know what I'm talking about? You know, notices of meetings and stuff like that, you know, a lot of duplicate stuff, a lot of, a lot of spam, you know, that kind of stuff. I just click on those boxes and I delete them immediately. That usually cuts it down by a third, sometimes more. Secondly, I scan quickly. And what am I looking for? Am I looking for the most important emails? No. I'm looking for ones that I can answer in 60 seconds or less, which for me is about 25 words. I type pretty fast. You guys may be slower typing. But that's what I do. So if someone is saying, Cliff, lunch tomorrow at 12 noon, okay, great, boom, that one's done. I got to remember to write that in my day planner, but you know, that one's done. I don't have to worry about that one anymore. Or if someone has a quick question, Cliff, we're thinking about doing this. Is this the right thing to do? Yeah, you're good. Go. You're good. Go. You know, those are easy. I look for the ones that are easiest to answer. Again, this is a time management tool. Third, then by this time I've done this, I'm down to only about a handful of messages. I want to say 5, 6 emails that are truly important and that I have to answer and that I have to give thought to. I can't just blow off in a 2-word answer. I have to actually think about the answer before I write. And those I do draft and I bill for my time. When I answer an email like that, I bill 1/10 of an hour, which in my case is $30 just for answering that email. I charge for that. I want the client to know that I'm not giving emails away for free. Not that kind of an email. The kind of email, Cliff, let's try to have lunch when you're schedule free. No, those I don't bill for. But Cliff, here's a real thorny question that's 5 pages long. What's your thoughts on this? That's an email I'm working. I'm giving a client an answer. I think I should bill for that, don't you? You should be doing that as well. Emails should never be free. At least those kind of emails should never, ever be free. If there's time left over and you still have some emails left over, then do the rest in chronological order. The early ones first and the later ones. Go in chronological order. And if you can't finish them in time, they go into your next slot, whatever your next time slot is for answering emails. So in my case, if I can't get them done by 11:30 in the morning, those emails will wait until 4 o'clock in the afternoon to get answered. Believe it or not, no one is going to die if I respond on that kind of a time frame. Okay. Another great time-saving tool for common email inquiries, draft a master response and cut and paste it whenever it's needed. Because I write this column, this newspaper column that's now turning into a podcast, I get a lot of emails every day from people who want, for lack of a better word, free legal advice. You know, hey Cliff, saw your video on YouTube, think you're great. Look, I got this problem, what do you think? Okay. I actually have a scripted response, which I cut into, it's a Word file. I actually have 5 Word files. Common email responses. And this is response number 1. Hi, blank, fill in the blank. Got your message. Thank you for supporting my column. This is really great. Say some nice things about me on social media. Your question's an interesting one. I will try to address it in a future column. If, however, you need an answer quickly, I'd be happy to answer the question, but please be advised that you are retaining my legal services and I will require an upfront retainer of at least $300. If that is acceptable to you, please let me know and I'll send you my standard retainer agreement with payment instructions. 90% of the time, I never hear back from this person. Okay, never. And why should I waste my time? And by the way, if that sounds cruel, by the way, I hope it doesn't, I'm not blowing your brain cells here by saying this. Let me ask you, why should I be giving a total stranger free legal advice that I could be sued over if it's wrong? Why should anyone be doing that? That's not sane, people. It's not safe. It sounds cruel. Think about it. This person is really imposing on me. I think so highly of you that I want you to give me your service for nothing, your best service for nothing. That's an insult, people. That's not fun. That's not being nice or ethical or whatever. That's being ruthless is what they're doing. Why should I give in to that? Seriously. I mean, I hope people don't think I'm being cynical here, but I don't think I should be doing that. I always tell people, I give a lot of programs for young lawyers. And this is one of the pieces of advice I give them for local bar associations. I say, always remember, there's only one thing worse in your life than being sued for malpractice. And that's being sued for malpractice over advice that you gave somebody for nothing. Because you will really feel stupid if that ever happens to you. So again, I don't think I'm being too cruel. If you run out of time, and there's an email that really has to be responded to, but you really have run out of time, send a short message saying, I'm backed up today, but I will get back to you later today, early tomorrow. Create an expectation so that they're not sitting around waiting for this thing, thinking it's going to come in the next 5 minutes. And most people can wait 24 hours for a response. I really don't feel that there are that many things in life that should be responded to on a same-day basis. If you do your best, but if you can't do it, saying you'll call back tomorrow morning, the world is not going to fall apart. At least, I don't think it will. Okay, let's talk about interruptions. Interruptions are part of the time management process. You will never do away with them. They will always happen. But again, you control when you're interrupted and when you're not going to be interrupted. That's a decision you make. Nobody else makes that for you, too. What you're going to have to do here is you're going to have to develop a set of what I call interruption protocols. These are little rules as to when you will be interrupted and when you will not be. And for all of us in this room, they're going to be a little different, by the way. They're not all going to be the same. These are some of mine, and they may apply to you, they may not. But you always got to have interruption protocols. One of my favorite, by the way, and I have to share this with you. One of my favorite people, she's an accountant here in Fairfield County. I won't mention by name. She's an absolutely lovely lady. She works out of her home, like I do. She has a couple of thousand of clients that she does taxes for. But unlike me, she has 3 very active teenage children, all of whom live at home. So inevitably, during tax season, when she's doing taxes, February, March, April of each year, she goes into her office at 7 in the morning, and she often doesn't come out until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. That's what that life is like, right? Her kids, meanwhile, are running around tearing the house apart, destroying everything in sight. How does she prioritize her time when she's doing that? Well, whenever something happens and the kids start screaming, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," she screams she opens the door and she screams out at the top of her lungs, "Is there blood?" If the answer is yes, she interrupts what she is doing and deals with it. If the answer is no, she says, "Deal with it, I'll see you at dinner time," and she goes back to doing whatever tax return she's doing at that particular. I just love this person, and I love that's a very simple example of an interruption protocol. When will you be interrupted? If some kid is bleeding, obviously that's an immediate crisis. That's an urgent and important thing you have to deal with. Otherwise, it'll wait till dinner time. That's her way of doing it. Not necessarily, I don't have kids, so it's not my thing. Here are some of my protocols. These are some of the things that I will be interrupted for. Messages regarding an acquisition or other deal that is closing within the next 48 hours. I have learned, I do a lot of small business acquisitions, people buying and selling small businesses, and I've learned over the years that 90% of the work gets done in the 48 hours right before the deal closes. Everybody waits until the last minute to focus on things. So when I know that a deal is closing on a Friday, I don't make lots of plans for Wednesday and Thursday because I know I'm going to get hit with a lot of stuff that's related to that closing, and I have to give that my top priority or else the thing won't close. And I get paid very well for those, by the way, so I want to make sure that those go smoothly as much as I can. So that's one of my protocols. If I have a deal closing in a few days, that deal kind of becomes priority number 1 because I know it's going to eat up a lot of my time. Projects under extreme time pressure that can be done in an hour or less. I do a lot of consulting agreements, employment agreements for people. Hey Cliff, I've been out of work for 6 months. I finally got my first job offer. Could you please look at the agreement and tell me if I'm giving away my life here? Believe it or not, it only takes me less than an hour to look at those. And I will always find time for that because number 1, they're under extreme time pressure. A lot of these people are people who've been laid off from corporate jobs. They haven't worked now in months, and now they finally have a client or a fish on the line. And believe me, these people, they want that agreement turned around in 5 minutes. They don't want to wait. They don't want a delay on that. So I will be interrupted. If an email comes in with that kind of a thing, I will always find time for it because I know it's only going to take me a little bit of my time to do it. Again, sometimes you prioritize not based on how important it is, but on how long it takes to respond to the thing. And there's another good example of that. Calls from prospective clients looking for a lawyer. I always find time for these, and very often I will interrupt a client's matter to take one of these. Why? Why should a new client take precedence over an existing one? That kind of defies common sense, doesn't it? But it doesn't. When a client calls me for the first time, I'm usually in a competitive situation. This person has been given 3 lawyers' names, including mine, and I want to be the first one that gets back to him or her. I want to be the first, because in 9 times out of 10, the first lawyer that calls back, that's the one that gets the deal. That's the one that gets the business. So I will always find time for that. That's always an interruption I will take because I don't want to lose that to that client to another lawyer, especially if the matter sounds interesting. Every once in a while, if it's something that looks like it's only going to be like a 20-minute thing, I'll let it wait. But if it's a really important matter, somebody buying a franchise, somebody looking to sell their business, that's something I will always respond to immediately. Messages from key clients generating $5,000 or more in revenue each month. I hate to tell you, size does matter to some extent in this world. If you're a client giving me $5,000 to $10,000 worth of money a month, you're going to get some priority over the person who only has a one-time $200 job that they need done. I hate to say it, that $200 job is going to have to wait. I do have several, I call them anchor clients, that together give me about 40 to 50% of my legal revenue, and I want to make sure those people are happy. I don't want those people frustrated at me. The little people, I hate to say it, they have to wait sometimes. And then last but not least, this may look a little weird, queries from journalists looking for content. I get a lot of call from people, hey Cliff, saw your video, I'm a journalist, I'm under deadline, I'm doing an article for the newsletter of the National Association of somebody or other, and we're doing I need a couple of quotes from you for this column. Believe it or not, that is a priority for me. And why is it a priority? Because something you probably don't know, before I went to law school, before I became a lawyer, I was a journalist. I worked for a newspaper in Yonkers, New York. I was a crime reporter. I was chasing police cars, fire trucks and stuff. And I know when you're on deadline and you need a couple of quotes from someone, your editor says, hey Cliff, I want you to call the mayor, get a couple of quotes from the mayor's office on this. You want that to happen in 5-10 minutes. You're on deadline. If you miss that deadline, the story gets squashed. You've just lost a day of your life doing this still silly thing. So I know what journalists go through when they're under deadline, and I have a reputation for being extremely responsive to these people, which is why I am frequently quoted in business articles, and very few other attorneys are, because I make that a priority. That's my marketing. If you read an article and you hear Cliff Edico, world-renowned small business attorney, author of 16 books, it sounds pretty good, doesn't it? I want that message to get out as much as I possibly can, and that's a little price that I pay for that. Now again, I'm not saying that these should be your interruption protocols. These are just some of the things that I do. But if you're in a service business, they might relate to some of the things you're doing. Okay, last but not least, okay, give yourself a break here. There is no such thing as perfect time management. If there is, I haven't found it. Okay, even doing all of this and even doing it well, there are still going to be times when you have crunches. You will never manage your time perfectly all the time. Never manage your time so tightly that there's no breathing room. Emergencies happen. Every once in a while there is blood, and you have to deal with it. Okay? Make sure that you budget at least a little bit of time each day for those things, and develop ways of dealing with situations where you don't handle it very well. So for example, if I promise a client that they'll have their document first thing in the morning, and driving home tonight I get a flat tire that takes me an hour to deal with, or maybe a little bit more because I'm not really mechanical, I have to call AAA for something like that, chances are I'm not going to get home in time to do that document by the morning, right? I have to have a way of dealing with that so I don't have an angry client the following morning. If you must disappoint a client, here's my famous quote, don't worry, you're not being ignored, only prioritized. It's a great quote. Everybody loves it, it gets a chuckle, and it sends the message, don't worry, I'm thinking of you, or if you're a Willie Nelson fan, you're always on my mind, okay? You're always on my mind. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Give them a time when you will respond and put it in your daily, weekly planner. One of the biggest things that drives clients crazy is when you say, I will get back to you, I promise you, between 9 and 10, and you don't do that. Okay? That drives them crazy. If you set the parameters, if you're saying, I will get back to you by X, make sure you meet that deadline. You have just given yourself a deadline, make sure you meet it. And if there is a problem, call the client immediately and say, just to let you know, I got a sick kid, I just got a call from my kid's school, he's sick, I got to bring him home, I promise you'll get it by this afternoon. Let the client know what's going on, manage their expectations. No one is going to fire you because you had a sick kid. Okay, at least as far if you have those kind of clients, by the way, maybe you're in the wrong line of work. Okay, let me just say, at some point, by the way, if every client that you have is a real SOB, I think you have to ask yourself a very serious question at that point. Is it them or is it me? Am I just in the wrong line of work here? I mean, if you truly do not like your clients, why are you in that business? I love working with entrepreneurs. I love working with small business people. There are some people who love working with criminal defendants. I personally am not one of those people, but there are lawyers who love working, with people who, are in jail maybe for wrong reasons. They love that. And hey, more power to it. But, you know, those people, in my experience, they tend not to pay their bills on time. A lot of them don't have any money. You know, I joke about this sometimes. I say, you know, people ask me if I have a specialty. I don't really have a specialty. I'm kind of a small business generalist. But there is a certain kind of client that tends to gravitate toward Cliff Enico. And I don't really have to work hard for this. They tend to find me. These are people who don't know what they're doing and have no money. And you know something? That's a huge underserved demographic. There's a ton of people like that out there in Fairfield County, and there aren't that many people servicing them. You know? Kind of wonder why, right? But that's it. You know, but seriously, there are a lot of people out there who fall into that demographic, and they should not really be your priority. My point here, though, is if you make a deadline yourself, you meet the deadline that you yourself impose. If there never seems to be enough time to get things done, even after doing this, you find that you're still out of control, you know, try raising your fees and eliminate your high maintenance, low revenue clients. We call those time vampires. They suck the time out of your day. The people that want you to return 10 phone calls a day and they've only got $300 to pay you, those are the people you should get rid of. I hate to say it. Now, again, I hope that doesn't sound too cynical. I'm not saying you shouldn't do pro bono things, you know, or for the better good, but in my experience, pro bono things tend to eat up a lot of time. They have a tendency to be time vampires because you feel guilty about saying no to those people. You know, they're almost people in the nonprofit world who are time vampires are almost always very nice people. It's very hard to say no to those people. But yet they can be if you're spending more than 20% of your total time each week on nonprofit matters, I think you have to ask yourself, is this something I really passionately believe in, or is this a time vampire that I need to get rid of? I mean, one of the reasons I don't sit on nonprofit boards is because once you sit on a nonprofit board, they demand all of your time and they want you to make a big contribution every year. Now, the contribution may be something I want to do, but the 20% or more of my time, how many of you here would want to work a job where you're working 70, 80 hours a week for $30,000, $40,000 a year, pre-tax? How many of you would do that? And yet I know a lot of nice people who are doing exactly that with their lives because they don't realize that they're doing it, okay? You don't want to be in that category, okay? Consider hiring people to do non-essential stuff. If you're spending too much time at the post office, maybe that's a sign that a family member or an employee or a student intern should be doing that and taking that task away from you because you can stay focused on your computer work. Or change your business model entirely. Maybe you're just in the wrong business. Maybe you're serving the wrong people here. Maybe there are other people who can serve them, but you're not that person. You have to be, whenever you find that time management is completely impossible, I humbly submit to you that you're part of the problem for that. There's a reason why that is happening, and it's usually because you are not a fit for what you are doing. You don't know how to work effectively, or you cannot work effectively in that space. Get rid of that and find something that will be easier for you to manage time-wise. Okay, delegation. I could do a whole course on delegation. I will be doing one, by the way, later this fall for SCORE in November. I'll be doing a delegate. Actually, on Halloween, I'll be doing it for SCORE as a webinar. I'll be doing that. So just so you guys know locally that I'll be doing that. Here are 2 rules of effective delegation. Essential tasks, things that must be done for your business to survive. These are the things you never delegate. Why? Because nobody in the world will do them as well as you do. No employee will, no family member will, no independent contractor, no dog. You have to do those things yourself. If an activity is truly essential to your business, that is something you must do yourself because no one else will do it as well as you do it. Delegate everything else as much as possible. So if doing contract work is not essential to your business, get a lawyer. If doing your taxes is not essential to getting your business done, get an accountant. Seriously. Yes, you have to pay these people, no question about it, but believe it or not, what those people do, they're doing you a huge favor. They're not just getting your taxes done or doing your contract or whatever, they're helping you manage your time. I can give you some very good examples of clients of mine who almost lost their businesses because they spent so much time on non-essential stuff that they let the essential stuff slide, keeping the clients happy, billing on a regular basis. I know lawyers who don't bill until 6 months after the work is done, and they still expect to get paid. How do you do that? You don't. If you don't bill the minute a job is done, you have no hope of getting paid. That's an essential task in my business, believe it or not, sending out bills on time. The minute I let my bills slide, my clients let their payments slide. And now I got a receivables collection problem, which you don't want to have, okay? Never delegate the essential stuff, delegate everything else, and in the long run, everything is non-essential. As you get older and more cynical, you will realize that there's only one or two things that you have to do in your business very well or perfectly for the business to succeed. Anything else, find somebody else to do it. Your time is extremely valuable. It is the most valuable thing you have. Do not waste it. Okay, here are some suggestions for further reading. There's the Stephen Covey book, The How to Stop Worrying and Start Living book by Dale Carnegie. Julie Morgenstern is a time management expert. She's written a bunch of books. I actually met her a couple of years ago on the speaking circuit. She's very lovely. Her books are very good. Her bestseller is Never Check Email in the Morning. I'm not sure I agree with that completely, but I like the idea of blocking out time specifically to deal with emails. The reason why she says that, by the way, is if you do your emails too early in the morning, there's always something in there that will become an interruption or a distraction. And before you know it, you spent the whole day on that and you didn't do any of the other things you set out to do. And she's very right about that. Thomas Westover, Time Management Hacks. Our Alec McKenzie was a famous Canadian time management expert. He wrote a bunch of books back in the 80s and 90s, which are kind of classics, and those are two. The Time Trap especially is a very good book about that. You can take a picture of this one. I'll try to leave it up for a second or so. These are just some excellent books. I'm sure they exist in digital Kindle formats too. But if you had to bring 5 time management books, and by the way, if you're reading 5 time management books, you really do have trouble with time management. And by the way, never buy a time management book that's more than 300 pages long. By the way, if the author can't manage their time, why should you? You know, seriously, who can write 300 pages on time management? If the time management book is any longer than 50 pages, toss it. I think seriously, if the author can't manage their time, why should you? And now these are 2 of my books. I have a little bit of time management stuff in the Small Business Survival Guide. That's really just a collection of some of my columns that are just a whole lot of fun. That's that Succeeding in Your Business column that I write. For those of you, and I know a lot of people watch these or we're selling on eBay or Amazon, this is the best-selling legal and tax guide for people who sell stuff on eBay or Amazon. It's now in its 3rd edition. I'm very proud of that. You know, but this is a book that actually eBay and Amazon, I'm the only consultant in the United States that currently works for both eBay and Amazon, believe it or not, because of this. I've made that sort of a little specialty of mine. If you're worried about things like sales tax and stuff like that, that's the book to get. And this is what I look like. You can take photos of this. I will let you. But seriously, if you have any time management, I mean, I'm not really a time management expert. Like I say, I'm a lawyer. But if you do have a question about specific things, send me an email. You know, I might be able to use it in my column or something like that, and I will certainly try to get back to you. If you say that you're a SCORE person, I will certainly try to get back to you. It was consistent with my obligations to all the other people that I have to serve in my portfolio career. So with that, folks, that's really all I have to say about managing your time. Thank you, folks. I appreciate it. Okay, what do I think about a to-do list? Well, that's kind of what my day planner is all about. It's kind of a to-do list, but it's a very specific to-do list that takes into account the fact that I will be interrupted at some points. The big mistake that people make is they do a to-do list and it's too rigid. That's what my point number 5 was. Don't plan your time so rigidly that you don't have time for interruptions, for crises, for emergencies, because they will happen. They will. You cannot prevent them. Even the most successful time management program in the world cannot prevent interruptions. The thing is, you got to develop rules for figuring out, okay, that one, no, that one, no, that one, yeah, okay, I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll take care of that. That's important. Again, you make those decisions all the time, And if not, get somebody else to do it. I mean, if there's too much on your to-do list to do in the course of a given day, that's a sign that you probably need some help. Someone who can just run around. I wish I could find somebody just to run around and help me with household chores, for example. A contractor comes over, obviously I have to stop and deal with the plumber, and meanwhile I got clients waiting for me, but I got to talk to the plumber. Now the pipe's leaking here, but I don't see it coming down there. I can't figure out where this water is coming from. I got to find time to give this person the information they need to do their job. I would love to have somebody to deal with that kind of a problem for me. I would. That's the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. Is the house, when you work from the house, okay, you and your spouse will no longer argue about who stays home and babysits the contractor. The expectation is you're the person who's going to deal with that. Okay, that's one of my little rules of working out of the house. Find somebody else. Not everything that the house needs done is a crisis. I actually know somebody, by the way, you know what a honey-do list is? You've heard that expression, of course. Here's somebody I know who's got an extremely busy job. What he does with his spouse, and they're very happily married, by the way, I should mention this. What he does is he says to his wife, you get one honey-do a day. You pick it. I'll let you decide what it is, but I've only got time for one honey-do a day. You tell me each day what you want me to do, and I'll make sure it gets done, but please no more than one. And that works, believe it or not. He's still married. I mean, it still works. They have a very good marriage. So there's one way that he manages the time, because otherwise, honey-do lists can get out of control too. When you're the one who works from home, your spouse will always think that you're the one who has the time. You have all this free time that you can deal with this stuff, and it's not true. If I'm in the middle of a 70-page lease, I am not thinking about the garbage pickup that morning. Okay, somebody else is going to have to live with that. Any other questions?
Or time vampires or colleagues or workplace.
What do you do when your time vampire is a colleague or boss? How about that? Okay, your boss has to be made happy or else you get paid. You don't get paid. Okay, let's start with boss. The boss is the easier one, okay? Generally speaking, when you're an employee and you work for somebody else, they decide what is urgent and important. In fact, one of the surest ways to lose a job is to send a signal to your boss that you know more than he does or she does about what is urgent and what is important. Something that they need you to do now may not seem like an important priority at all, but I hate to say it, they're the ones who get to make that decision because they're paying you. The only valid response is, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, how high do I jump? That's the answer, if you're an employee. Now, colleagues at work, okay, are a different story. And attorneys are major, major offenders here. Attorneys like nothing more than to walk around to other attorneys' cubicles and disrupt their day with silly questions, because they want to get a second, third, or sometimes 17th opinion. Are you a lawyer, by the way? Do you know what I'm talking about? You worked in a law firm, so you know what I'm talking about, right? All they do is talk around getting 16th opinions on things. I know. Well, no, the shortest way to deal with it, first of all, if you are under the gun and on a project, is to simply just say, look, I really don't have time for this. Let's talk over drinks some night. But I'm under the gun right now. So and so really needs me. I used to do this all the time when I was working in a law firm. I was doing a project for partner A, and partner B wanted me to interrupt that and do something for him. And in a law firm, it's a partnership, so all the partners are kind of all important. But that's not really true. I learned after a while that certain partners were more important than others. So what I would do at that point is I would figure out who the more important partner was, and I would say, well, I'm sorry, I'd love to work on this project, but just so you know, partner Hay, who was the head of the management committee and has all the power clients in his pocket, he wants me to get this done by 5 o'clock. If you do me a favor, if you could please talk to him, if he will let me interrupt for this project, I'll be more than happy to do it for you. That was my way to deal with that situation where I had two competing partners that wanted me at the same moment in time. Colleagues at work, I mean, I know people who on their cubicles will put a little sign up or something like that, saying, I'm on a project right now, and they actually have it color-coded. So red means do not disturb under any circumstances. Yellow means I can be disturbed for only a few minutes. Green means please feel free to interrupt me. I'm not really doing anything important right now. I know people who do stuff like that, and it's perfectly fine as long as you never use the green one. That's the trick. But you can do stuff like that if you want to. Now, some people do. Again, I find that humor is a great way to diffuse tension. Probably the best, if you can, we have a saying in the legal business, a laughing jury never convicts. And it really is true. If you have the ability, it's impossible to dislike someone who makes you laugh. That's why when a comedian dies, we always refer to him or her as beloved, right? If a movie star dies, it depends on who the movie star is. But when a comedian dies, an angel loses his wings, right? These are beloved people. We love our comedians. Why? Because they make us laugh. If you have the ability to make someone laugh, you'll be able to know how to manage your time with those people a little bit better. If you can make a joke out of it, listen, I'd love to help you right now, but frankly, they're going to fire me if I don't get this thing done in 30 minutes. I really got to get this thing done. If there's a way you can figure out a way to do it, that is probably your strongest weapon in dealing with colleagues. Unless, of course, they're a bunch of bozos, in which case, you can blow them off. I mean, we are not going to talk about surviving office politics. That's another conversation for another day. Just remember, is never okay with you. Remember the New Yorker cartoon? That's a great little time management tool for dealing with some people that just want to yak and disrupt your day.